Good morning, good evening, wherever you may be. Thanks for tuning into episode 3 of the Workwolf podcast. I'm your host, Frank Krupe, aka Frank the Tank, here in the studio of the Workwolf head office headquarters right outside of the city of Toronto. If you are here and listening, thank you for joining, my friends. I have some good news for you. This episode is going to bestow some wisdom upon you because we have a very special guest joining us today. I'd like to welcome in Dmitry Buterin, who is a serial tech entrepreneur, founder of 3 multi-million-dollar businesses, a spiritual seeker, and the father of Vitalik Buterin, who is the founder of Ethereum. Dimi, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Hey, Frank. How are you doing?
Excellent. Super interesting and inspirational story that you have, Dimi. And there's a lot of questions I want to ask and get to over the course of the next 45 minutes or so. But why don't we start with this? Give our listeners just a brief overview of your life story and how you got to where you are today.
I was born in the Soviet Union, grew up there, was always very geeky and, was interested in computers and technology and stuff, and ended up going to the university to study programming, and then got a first kind of experience to observe the fall of the Soviet Union, which was a really fascinating experience, and also gave me real taste for kind of watching centralized systems struggling and falling apart and all of this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Then accidentally became an entrepreneur just to survive, if you will, in that environment. Eventually moved to Canada 22 years ago, and I've been living in Toronto ever since. That's kind of the brief version of that, and I'm happy to expand on anything.
Yeah, so I know that you founded a number of companies when you moved to Toronto. Tell us,
And before.
and before, okay, so tell us a little bit about each of those companies, just I guess as a quick snapshot of what they do.
Yeah, I mean, most of the businesses I've been involved in, the businesses I started, they were all in technology.
Mm-hmm.
I actually did try once a non-technological business. The business was related to importing and selling furniture, but that just didn't work for me. Like, I'm really, really passionate about technology, the way it can improve lives of humans, if you will.
Yeah.
So the first couple of businesses, they were about financial software. So we were basically producing a local version of that financial software from the West, and then the consulting, the services side of that was we were doing installing that software for organizations in Russia who were trying to kind of re-engineer themselves from the old Soviet-style economy to proper management and capitalist-style economy, if you will.
Right.
So those two companies. Then in the dot-com era, I co-founded a startup, which I think the concept was actually quite viable, but it was way too early. The company we were trying to build a system that psychotherapists could use with their patients in between their face-to-face time,
Okay.
so they could use some online tools to kind of follow up with their patients, interact with them, and stuff like that. And then eventually I had a service company here in Toronto. We built all kinds of custom software. And eventually we built this company called Wild Apricot, which was, we were producing, if you will, this all-in-one systems to serve small nonprofits. So we ended up growing that company quite substantially over about a decade, and eventually sold it. And when we sold the company, it was serving about 10,000, well, actually maybe more than that, 20,000 small nonprofits, kind of serving their websites, donations, membership systems, emails, and stuff like that.
Wow, outstanding. So, obviously, successful entrepreneurs, it's quite a journey that they go on, and oftentimes they've got to take risks. So, I'm curious, what are some of the biggest risks that you took? And maybe you can give us one example from your personal life and also your business life, but risks that you took that had significant payoff.
I mean, every decision that we make, there's always a certain risk in that, right? And um, how to put this? I don't really think that much about risks and such. I kind of find it more interesting and useful to connect with our fears around every decision that we have, right? Because like there's risk in everything. I can go outside on the street and a brick will fall from a building and kill me. That's risk. Everything
Right.
is risk. So really, it's about finding our comfort with whatever we are doing, right? And what exactly we're scared of. So kind of like connecting with what with our fears and really deeply sensing them. That's for me a really essential aspect of building anything, whether that be a business, a relationship, or anything else you want to do, any kind of public initiative.
Okay. Was there ever any fear that you had to overcome in terms of getting some of these successful businesses that you've had off the ground? I mean, entrepreneurial, the entrepreneurial world can be very intimidating for people, and the idea
Yes,
of right, the idea of overcoming that fear to be your own entrepreneur is definitely there, like you said. So,
right.
did you have that fear? I guess first of all, and number two, how did you overcome that to push yourself?
Yeah, I think that most like we don't really overcome fears. Like we have a story about, oh, I'm so powerful. Most people have a story. It's a natural progression. Every human kind of, for some time, people live in this model of I'm a victim. Then they live in this model, oh, I'm an achiever. I'm overcoming fears. I'm doing stuff. But I
Mhm.
mean, that's not really how I think about the world anymore. But I mean, when I started my very first business, it was very fucking scary because I really had no clue what I was doing. And growing up in the Soviet Union, there was no concept of entrepreneurship around me, right? Because like life was all supposed to be managed by this kind central government entity,
Mhm.
taking care of everything. So starting the business, it was really scary. It's like, oh, I'm going from having this job and having this income to doing this, and who the hell knows what's going to happen? I mean, nobody really knows that, right? So it was very scary, and still, I guess. I mean, if we go forward with something, it really just means that, I mean, every human being, we also have a range of conflicting emotions. Like, here's the fear of this, but then obviously there's some attraction, and that driver is different. Like, I generally think that most entrepreneurs are very wounded people who really want to prove to the world that, oh, I'm so good, I can achieve this stuff, I can build this business. And then, I mean, subconsciously, it's really like they really hope that when they do this stuff, then they will stop feeling like piece of shit inside of themselves.
Right.
And and I mean, that's bullshit, but that's really kind of what drives us.
Yeah, no,
So
and that's an interesting point you make, that, attaching yourself to success, and placing, the importance of that,
yes,
in terms of how it make you feel, right? That, and it won't always
yes.
necessarily make you feel the way you think it will, I think is what you're trying to say, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to say that if you like, again, most of the time people kind of want to have this dream and hope, and like they always trying to escape the current moment because they think, oh, like the current moment sucks, but if I do this and build this, and then eventually this bright future comes. And I mean, it never comes, because when you achieve that result, then your mind tells you, you know what, like we're not feeling good enough, let's kind of set a higher bar. So I would say the way I think about this now is actually the opposite. Is like, when you're able to surrender fully and give up on all of your hopes and dreams, and then you can just go and do what you want, because then everything is an upside instead of like dreaming and hope. And you can focus on enjoying what's happening right now, right? Because again, most entrepreneurs, right, like they can live in this state of like constant stress. So like,
Right.
this sucks, but if I hold on,
Yeah.
if I'm being an achiever and I do this stuff, then it'll be better. It will not be better, right?
Right.
So
Right.
kind of, instead of like trying to escape the now for some promise of something in the future, I would say, how about trying to focus on what is the now, actually, and the fears of the now, their discomfort of the now, their hopelessness of the now, and all of this stuff, because otherwise, it's just a never ending cycle.
That's right. And once you achieve one goal, then what?
Yeah.
There's another one waiting. And one concept that is interesting is that, and yogis will sometimes talk about it. When you drop all your desires, it allows you to manifest and reach your goals quicker and easier, because you take the pressure off of yourself a little bit. And I know that's a concept that I've thought a lot about is, um, how do you keep that definitive aim of achieving your goal without placing too much importance on it, to the point where you said, like yourself, you're stressed out and running around crazy. Like it's all about balance, I guess I'm trying to say. Like how did you find that balance?
Yeah, I believe that balance is unachievable, right? And the balance is not like people think that they can achieve some kind of static balance, and it's impossible because your life will mess with you in so many different ways. It's like, oh, you feel you in balance? Well, here's somebody getting sick, you getting sick, or here's like, COVID happening, whatever, something else will
Mhm.
happening. So balance is really not in um, finding some kind of static perfect picture that's not going to last for anything longer than day, a month, or whatever it is. But uh, their balance of life and is in its constant movement. Life is constantly moving somewhere, right? And what we have is the current moment, with all of the things that are in the current moment. And the balance again is in sensing all of those things that are moving us forward. And and going back to the way you formulated the question, the way I think about goals is very different now. It's instead of like trying to set, oh, this is where I'm going. I'm more like trying to sense, where am I going, like, and observing like where exactly this human is going and what is driving this human. And then life will happen to your goals, to your life, whatever, right? I mean, it's not your life anyway. It is just life. And then can you sense what's new and different, right? Because that's typically we just end up stuck with our mind like, oh, this is where it should be going, right? And something as simple as an entrepreneur, and you set a goal of certain like growth for this year, right?
Right.
Let's say that you want to grow by 50%. And very few people then ask themselves, like, why the fuck 50%? Why not 10%? Why not 200%? Right?
Mhm.
And the frequent answer is really like, you have no clue. And, you read some books, you read some articles, and you benchmark yourself. But the thing is like, if you just set this target and then, but you just focus on this target without sensing what is happening, then it's really bound to lead to some problems because uh, if the target is set too high, then your team will eventually be overstressed. You might achieve the target, but the price that you pay for that will be very, very high, right? So it's like, yeah, I mean, start with some goal, some target, but then kind of let's maintain this sensitivity to the current moment. Like, okay, how does it feel to this human being? How does it feel to members of the team? Like, are there open conversations about this? It's like, why is this timeline? Let's say we're building this product. What is the really realistic time frame for this, right? And
Right.
um, and uh, and again, like things will happen and things will shift and things that you don't expect, like maybe your leading product guy will quit. Maybe COVID will happen. Maybe again somebody will get sick. Like your software might turn out to be a piece of crap, and you will have to redesign that.
Mhm.
So life again will keep throwing those things to you. It's like setting goals is fine, but again, like it's not really about setting the goal and just the attachment to the goal, but it's more like, okay, you know what, like whatever you feel, whatever feels right to you, it's fine to have this goal, but again, let's go back to the present, let's go back to the now versus
Yes.
like
Yeah.
constantly living in that future.
Yeah. And I think that's why it's so important as well to attach a higher purpose to your goals, right? Because anything can happen.
Yes. And
It's
not
interesting.
attach, I don't like the word attach, right?
Okay.
Because uh but understand what is driving you there, right?
Right. Right.
Because if you come up with a goal and then you come up as like, okay, how do I come up with a very nice way now to explain to myself and others why this is the right goal, right? And this is bullshit, because everybody
Right.
will know that it's bullshit. And you can come up with really wonderful language around that. Oh, here's our mission and our vision. And everybody will kind of know that it's bullshit, but let's kind of play this bullshit game because we have to. But I'm saying you don't have to, right? Like, actually, I think that the more we can realize that life is so much better without bullshit, then it's so much easier to live and to build products, to build businesses, right? So it's really about the goal is kind of secondary to understanding like what is driving me there, right? Like,
Right.
what is my drive to build this, to create this, right? And it's really difficult because the mind will come up with really the mind will try to tell you all this wonderful answers, and kind of one yardstick is the more abstract you answer is like, oh, I'm going to build this because of this good for humanity. That's most likely bullshit, right? But if you listen to yourself very carefully and gently and like, oh yeah, you know what, like I really hope that if I build this, maybe I'll have this money, maybe I'll have this recognition, maybe whatever, right? But kind of let's kind of be very sensitive and very honest with like why we're trying to do this, right? And that's
Hmm.
really the key. So I think that most businesses, they don't spend enough time up front trying to really define like why are we doing this, what is our vision, what's our mission, and then how do we do this, right? And they just like, okay, let's keep doing stuff, oh, let's start doing stuff. And that's, I mean, it's a very intricate balance because again, we cannot achieve that balance, but it's on the one hand like thinking about all of this stuff and also knowing that it will evolve the more you kind of you start with certain vision and mission, and also doing stuff is very important because you have seen that, I'm sure that many people then get stuck in this trap like, oh, you know what, like I need to do more refinement of my concept, of my vision, of my mission, and only when I do a perfect vision and mission, then I will start doing stuff and it'll be so awesome. Well,
Hmm.
that's another kind of way we're trying to escape our fears, right? Because it's really like nothing will ever be perfect, and but do something and start doing something and then keep evolving, right? Because again, the goals uh, for them to align with life, if you will, the way we should deal with them is kind of how do we deal with life, right? And life is moving forward, it's constantly changing, there's constantly new input, new information, new conditions, new whatever, right? So it's like, okay, let's define something, let's let's make some first step toward that, learn from that, and repeat and rinse and repeat, right? And
Right.
I think that I know that was the case for Workwolf, right? There was quite a lot of iterating from kind of my conversations with Eric, the founder. I know that there was a lot of iterating in terms of like how that was designed and then implemented, right? It was not a straightforward path, right?
Hmm. Yeah, and what's interesting is I know Eric has mentioned a few times, speaking of Workwolf, that the concept of Workwolf is something that was somewhat inspired from a conversation that he had with you at one of the entrepreneur forums, where you were suggesting that there are many applications for blockchain within business, and then Eric, coming
Yeah.
from a successful recruiting background, had the idea to start using blockchain for verification of credentials. Do you remember that conversation, or maybe that specific
It was not.
forum
It was
meeting?
more than one conversation, and I don't
Okay.
remember a specific one, but for sure, right? Like again, like now that if we talk about blockchain and crypto space a little bit, now that we have seen some traction with some of the sectors like decentralized finance and most recently NFTs and art and whatnot, but I think that their whole space, design space of verification attestation services, this is going to be huge, right? Because time and again, we have seen in the last couple of decades that all of this information sitting in some centralized company servers, eventually it will be hacked, the information will be public and whatnot. And the blockchain and crypto are turning this around. So now instead of some big company owning my stuff, I actually can maintain those records myself, and then I can share those records with whoever I need to share. And verified based on the blockchain, and some companies have attested to me having specific skills, experiences, whatever other things. So I think that this is going to be one of the really big areas for blockchain to be incorporated in our business activities.
All right. Now, one of the things you mentioned as being a key to personal growth and success is being involved in a group of like-minded individuals, a forum that you can brainstorm, you can share ideas with, and
Yes.
this is a beautiful example we have right here, because again, Workwolf, the concept, is something that helped get sparked in one of these forums that our CEO Eric Simmons was in. So, talk to us a little bit about, for the young entrepreneurs, future entrepreneurs listening to this. Speak to the importance of getting involved in a like-minded group like that.
Yeah.
And obviously the benefits are evident right in front of us.
For sure. Yes. No. I'm a big fan of I think that for every human is really essential to find their tribe, right? And it might be not one, but there can be multiple tribes, based on all the multitude of interests that you have and passions and whatnot. And specifically for entrepreneurs, right? I think it's really essential because many entrepreneurs, they are very individualistic and they kind of want to prove it to the world and create it on their own, right? But my personal experience has been that the more I'm able to involve other humans in what is being created, whether that's creating a business with other co-founders, business partners, right? Then it makes a huge difference. And even if you're building the business on your own, then getting engaged with some kind of community of people who are trying to do similar things is really essential, right? And there are a couple of things there. One that is more obvious, again, to younger people and just starting the entrepreneurial path is just understanding that when you engage with people trying to do similar stuff, then you can actually share knowledge and best practices. As like, how do you build a sales function, how do you go about marketing, how do you organize HR, how do you go about vision mission, stuff like that, right? And this is really useful and important, but there is actually stuff way deeper than that, right? And that's let's call it soft stuff, because the biggest hurdle in building a business is it's not really about knowledge and the activities about this, but it's really about dealing with the soft human side of things, dealing with our own fears and emotions, the fears and emotions of other people on the team, and so on. And I find that the best entrepreneurial communities are those communities where people don't just go to hang out and exchange some ideas and best practices with other entrepreneurs, but those communities where people can actually connect on a very deep level. And that's been the case again. Eric and myself, we've been a member of EOR, Entrepreneurs Organization, for many years. And EO is really based around the concept of helping people to connect on a very deep level about kind of what are they scared of, what they are vulnerable about. Because you know what, every business decision that you're struggling with, every business quote unquote problem that you're struggling with, it's really always about the human element, right? So let's say that you're trying to build a sales team, right? And their superficial conversation can be, okay, hey guys, let's say you're talking to fellow entrepreneurs building businesses and you're trying to exchange ideas how to build a sales team, right? And you might exchange ideas about, okay, here are some ideas how to structure compensation, here are some sales systems and stuff like that, right? But then beyond that, the conversation can be, oh, you know what, I heard the sales guy and he's not performing and I'm kind of struggling to get my feedback, and now I want to let him go, this is not happening. So all those soft conversation about human emotion side of things, much more difficult to go into, much more important to success of any kind of business or initiative or function in the business and so on.
Right. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. I mean, just some of our comments here. One of them coming up from one of our users here. The issue with entrepreneur networks is that people go to them just to talk about their companies, their business,
Yeah.
and then the commenters go on to say, instead of helping each other, and I guess to which we would say, well, then you haven't found the right forum that you haven't
Yes, for
found the right
sure, for
group,
sure.
right?
There are many of them out there, right? And yes,
Yeah,
some of them some of them people try to go there and they hope like actually, oh, I'm going there and I talk about my business. So really they're trying to sell themselves, right? Some others where people kind of go there like, oh, here's the community where we can kind of share our successes and talk to each other how cool we are.
right.
But the best communities I found are the ones that kind of actually go deeper, right, and help people connect on a deeper level, vulnerably open up and talk about all the challenges, all the fears, all the struggles.
Yeah. And this here's Eric. I know our Workwolf CEO is watching. He says our forums are meeting for 7 years. We're always there for another personally that
Yes.
connects first. So excellent example there. 90% of startups fail at some point.
Yes.
We've hit on a few different important elements that are required for success and things that you've experienced firsthand. What other advice could you give to the entrepreneurs listening right now, so that they don't fall within that 90th percentile? I mean, we've talked about the forum group. We've talked about the
Yeah.
importance of balance, and understanding that it's impossible to achieve balance. You just have to mitigate it. We've talked about, um, you know, the importance of, like you said, not attaching a higher purpose to your goals, but understanding, why you're doing what you're doing, um,
Mhm.
relevant to what you're trying to accomplish. What other advice could we give to these entrepreneurs?
I'll say a couple of things. One is actually there's lots of material out there, lots of approaches that have been developed. So kind of like if the more you can try to not reinvent the wheel, right? Like how do you structure a business? What are the high level business functions? How do you hire people? How do you do this and that? There's so much information out there. There are some amazing frameworks, like there is one that I'm a big fan of by Gordon Harnish. He's got a couple of books. The most famous book is called Scaling Up. And there are similar other frameworks. So instead of like trying to reinvent the wheel, you can actually listen, you can find some awesome business books and frameworks and kind of structures that can do that. And that's out there. And that's kind of, if you will, the easier part of building the business. And the second point that I want to make, that building a business is really about the essential aspect of this is your own understanding of self. What is, who is me? What am I good at? What are my fears? What are my desires? What are my attachments? Right? Because the more we can understand ourselves and like, why the heck am I constantly overworking? Why am I stressed out? And at least like starting to realize that, oh yeah, I'm constantly stressed out. I'm not taking good care of my health. My relationships are really shot to hell and stuff like that. Like, observing those things and seeing those patterns in yourself, and kind of like then uh, looking deeper into that stuff, right? So like those aspects of uh, looking out for mental health for yourself, your business partners, your coworkers, and things like meditation and some other new directions in this whole space. So like deep psychological understanding of your own psychology, emotions, mental health, and things like that. I think this is really the essential aspect of building anything of importance and sustainable success of whatever you're building.
Yeah. It's so interesting you mentioned that, because that is, I mean, one of my favorite quotes is know thyself, right?
Right.
And not just for success in business, but I mean, really, when you contemplate, your actions, why do you feel a certain way? Why do you do the things that you do? You
Yes.
can you can peel back some of the layers of maybe some of the things that are holding you back. And I think that's something that, maybe I'm wrong, but some people are afraid to do, is really reflect on themselves and get to know themselves. I mean, we're so good at getting to know other people, our significant others. We're so good at, getting to know clients and
Yes.
understanding their needs and wants, and getting to know your favorite sports heroes, etc. But getting to know yourself,
Yeah, it's
is
it's
something that
much
takes a lot
harder
of work.
because from inside of this human being, as we look inside and we have our certain story about ourselves and the world, and this story, we're typically a good guy, and it's us versus the world. We're doing this, building this, and for some people it's actually it's a story of I'm a bad guy, I'm this and that, and I should not be. It's a story of struggle, whatever. But in any case, this emotional filter that we have makes it really hard for us to understand, to really see what is happening, the way how the things that we do affects business partner, coworkers, people we're in a relationship with, and stuff like that. So actually going back to when you have a number of close friends, and that entrepreneurial community can be a source of that, and has been for me for over a decade and a half, is actually having some people in your life who can give you some really honest and loving feedback, right? And it can be very difficult to take. I remember that was maybe 7, 8 years ago, and with a bunch of other entrepreneurs, we were this retreat for a few days, and we had a really awesome business coach uh, working with us for a couple of days. And after first half a day, he gave all of us a bit of kind of his perspective, and it was really hard to take. Like my human ego was like, no, you don't understand me. I am this, and you're telling me
Right.
I'm that, and like I hate you. I should leave this fucking group, and you suck, right? Like
Yeah.
all kinds of emotions. But eventually, the more we're able to kind of get this feedback and understand, oh, okay, I have my perspective on myself, but other people, what are their perspective on me, right? And it's not like my perspective is correct and their perspective is incorrect. They all just perspectives. And the more perspectives you're actually able to hold in your mind and understand that this human can be viewed in so many ways, and
Mm-hmm.
by your kids, by your spouse, by your friends, by your business partners, by your business associates, like you can actually build a much richer perspective, much richer picture of what is this about, and then it's much easier to understand than kind of like, oh, what's going to happen next with this human being and in this business.
Right. So your son Vitalik, obviously founder of Ethereum, very successful. How much did he look to you for that type of honest feedback? And did you? I mean, it's interesting because I'm sure
Little to none.
little to none, really.
Yes.
Is that because of the father-son relationship? You wanted to keep the business side of what he was doing separate? How did that happen?
I mean, what he was building also was not a business, right? It is an open source project, initiative, whatever you want to. And actually, in the early stages when he was building this, and there were some people who really wanted to make this into a VC backed startup and make tons of money.
Hmm.
And Vitalik didn't care about money, and he didn't care about building a business, and he just wanted to create this thing. And it was very difficult, kind of in the early stage of this, but eventually he uh, he made some decisions, and their community that grew around that, and those early co-founders and contributors, and eventually this huge community of all the people that are now contributing to the growth of Ethereum ecosystem. It's very different, and I have learned a lot from watching that, because again, in my own ways of thinking business, I have progressed a lot from kind of thinking about business, this very structured thing, and then in later stages of my business career, thinking about more for non-hierarchical structures in the business, things like holacracy and stuff like that, and then open source projects and projects in the crypto space. Most of those successful projects, they're not actually built and organized like businesses. There are some very new and very different structures and ways of guarding those structures or emergence. Like, there's one concept of DAO, decentralized autonomous organizations, DAOs. And back to a question about Vitalik, it's like, of course, I tried to support him and give him my thoughts and ideas where he could and where they were applicable. And sometimes some of them probably they were useful. Some of the things that he was doing, they were very different from everything that I have done. And also for him as a young adult, it was really important to build his own way and can learn his own lessons, right? And the way that was done, also he traveled so much. It's not like he was sitting in the next room to me. Like, ever since he started Ethereum, he was basically a non-stop world traveler, and spending very little time in Toronto, so stuff like
Hmm.
that.
Yeah. Did has the success and where he's brought in Ethereum to, has that surprised you? Did you always believe that it would be a big thing, or do you sit back sometimes and say like, wow, like look at my son and what he accomplished? That this is crazy.
I really had no clue that it would be this significant, right? I'm kind of looking at this whole ecosystem and all the different other ecosystems, right? Because even if you look beyond Ethereum, there are so many other ecosystems which are built as actually, if you will, copycats of that, right? And beyond that, and that's how innovation happens. We copy what has been built, we trying to improve that, and so on. So really, I watch the unfolding of all that with a lot of amazement, like, and fascination, like, and I can, again, like, having lived through their birth and unfolding of internet, my gut feel is that their paradigm shift that we see happening with technology and through blockchain and crypto is of even bigger magnitude, right? And it's happening even faster, if you will. So it's
Mhm.
very exciting to kind of look at all of that.
Yeah. So I want to ask you um, about you've mentioned it earlier. What was the scaling up? Who's the author of
Yes,
Scaling Up?
Vern Harnish.
Okay, very nice. And one of our commenters mentioned that in the comment section as well. So I'm curious. I'm sure you read a lot. The average CEO reads between 3 to 5 books a month. On the low end, that's 36 books a year. And like for some people,
Mhm.
that sounds like a lot. It's probably true. Eric's got a big bookshelf in his office rather of books. I'm curious, Dimi, is there a book or two that you could pinpoint or even recommend to our listeners as something that has been very profound in your life and something that really helped your personal growth, development, etc., whatever it may be? Give us a few books that have really had a profound effect on your life.
There were so many, right, over the years. And the thing is, like, at a certain stage in your life, some books would resonate and some books would not work at all, right? So it's hard to pick some. I mean, Scaling Up is one of them for an entrepreneur. Another book that I would mention is The E-Myth by Michael Gerber, I believe. And it's a very foundational book for, I feel, for young entrepreneurs, because it really, many people who go into business, the distinction between, like, they might be really good at what they do, and let's say they might be a software engineer, an accountant, painter, who cares, but now they want to build a business around that function, and building a business around that is very different from actually doing that function. So that particular book, the E-Myth by Michael Gerber, is a good book to kind of for foundation around that. Scaling Up, as I mentioned, Patrick Lencioni is one writer that I'm a big fan of, and a lot of his books are awesome. On more for personal side, one of the books that made a huge impact on me is a book called Waking Up by Sam Harris. So yeah, those probably kind of few recommendations that I have.
Interesting, and it's so true what you said, that different books will resonate at different times of your life. So
Yeah.
that is a tough question to ask. For instance, there's a book I'm reading right now, and I'm halfway through it, and I was thinking to myself the other day, if I was reading this 5 years ago, I wouldn't have made it past the third page.
Yeah.
So it really does all depend. But thank you for those recommendations. I'll check Wake Up out.
Waking Up.
Waking Up. I
Yeah.
think I've seen that. I've heard that talked about. It's obviously a good one.
Mhm.
So I want to ask you. You sold your last business in 2017, right?
Yes.
Was that hard to do? I mean, that's your baby, right? That's your business. I'm sure the return in terms of the financial gain was great, but as an entrepreneur, once you've built the business and you sell it off, is it tough? Just based on how the blood, sweat, and tears that have gone into it, the emotional attachment that was there. Tell us about that experience.
Yeah, it was a pretty difficult experience. There were lots of challenges, right? On the one hand, lots of fears, and for example, lots of fears about the way I felt. Oh, but what's going to happen to the business and to the employees, because it's unknown. You talk to the buyer and they seem like they're a good company, but you don't really know what's going to unfold. So there were lots of fears and doubts around that. So for me, kind of, it was really like I struggled with that quite a bit. And, I was oscillating, should we go ahead and sell the business, or should we not do that? And the business might grow. But eventually I already came to the conclusion within myself that, okay, you know what, like building this business was awesome. It was really essential part of my life, and, so much growth and so many friendships, and, all the awesome people who grew through the business. But then I felt like, you know what, this is the right decision for me. And can I put this on the table? And how can we with all the other shareholders, all other people in the business, and kind of openly discuss what's going to happen. And it was really interesting also to watch what happened to the business ever since. Like it was originally purchased, the private equity company. They purchased another entity in the US, and they bought our business, and then they put it together, quickly sold to another private equity firm. And then the business, the management team running this conglomerate kind of really messed up, and the business really struggled. Not kind of our part of the business, but the overall thing. And it was really painful to watch that. And they made a whole bunch of really bad decisions, if you will. And eventually, the whole management team of this conglomerate was fired, and new management came in, and they seemed like really good people. And it was very gratifying to see that kind of when that happened. A lot of the people who came up through the ranks of our part of the business, they were recognized as some of the best kind of players, team members in this overall business, and they've been promoted. And now this overall bigger business, there are lots of people who kind of work in our business and key positions, kind of really leading a much bigger business and taking much bigger things forward. So that's really awesome to kind of watch that for me. And all in all, I stay in touch with so many people that, ex-colleagues, teammates, and kind of watch them, so many of them moving forward and doing bigger things and so on. That's really exciting and gratifying.
Yeah, that's amazing. We've got one of our commenters here. That's a more significant challenge for some personalities. Depending on in terms of selling the business, depending on the type of personality you have, there'll be different challenges.
Yeah, I don't believe in personalities, right? I mean, and I'm saying that in jest, meaning that
Okay.
we are what we are, and we're not a certain box. We're not like personality type A, B, 14. Like, every human being is basically an infinite complex, has infinite complexity.
Mm-hmm.
And when people talk about the ego, that's really like we have this internal story. Here's me, and I'm this. Maybe I'm shy, maybe I'm strong, maybe I'm aggressive. Who the fuck knows? And then we constantly try to live that story, but eventually over the years it's actually recognized as this is just a story, and the human being is infinite. There's an infinite potential of changing, and there are different circumstances, and different parts of you can come out in certain circumstances. So like human being can always evolve. Life always evolves, move forward. Every human being evolves and moves forward, and even when it gets stuck, then life still moves forward with around it, if you will.
Yeah, and it's so interesting. I mean, I agree with that. I mean, what is a personality? It's a persona that people have created for themselves. You think of yourself as, let's say you think of yourself as a shy individual. That's my personality. I'm a shy person. But there's no reason that person can't be outgoing, can't be talkative and
totally.
Yeah,
I used to think of myself as a very introverted, shy kind of person.
Mm-hmm.
And
why
I was that.
Why think that? There's no point.
Right. Yeah. I mean, then that's like we can observe ourselves, right? But the thing is, like, we can observe ourselves interact with the world in a certain way, and that's fine. But the thing is, like, it doesn't mean that this is what and who we are. It's just like, okay, so this is very common. You can look at this human being and say, okay, it's common for this human being to behave in certain situations like this, and that's the truth. But it doesn't mean that in a different situation tomorrow, this human being cannot act in a very different way, can open up, and can be very outgoing and connect with people, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. Well, one of the last things I want to ask you about, since we're getting on to this topic now, is the correlation between, spirituality, meditation, and success in business. So I know,
Yes.
reading from your personal website that, since you sold your business in 2017, you've spent a lot of time sort of on the spiritual path in meditation, self-reflection. Um, Talk to us about the importance of that, and the correlation again between, that aspect and success in business.
Yeah. It really comes down to understanding yourselves, right? And also the measurement of success. What is exactly success? Because mind creates a certain story about success. It's like, okay, when I get this much, maybe when I sell my business, when I have this many employees, when I have this much money in the bank, things will change. And my experience has been that this is like learning that those are bullshit stories. Like I remember when I sold my very first business and I made a few million, and I haven't stopped for like a single day. I just like all the money that was that we made from selling the business, we invested into the next business and continued building this stuff because just like my mindset was like I have to, right? And like and so spirituality for me is really about understanding of ourselves, and the better we understand what is happening, what is success for ourselves, what our patterns, what our limitations, and things like that, the more clarity we have around that, the more we can actually be in alignment with that. Because if we have a certain story that, oh, you know what, to be happy, we should be this and do that. But in fact, kind of, we actually know that maybe for us, we want to have a dog, we want to be outside every day, and it's important for us to whatever live near some water, whatever it is for every human being. So that deeper understanding of ourselves and our own patterns then can create more alignment with what we do in terms of our careers and achievements with the rest of our lives. Because again, uh, it used to be, I think that until now, most people, they kind of think like, here's professional, here's personal, right? And let's kind of, this is my career and this is my life. And I think that this distinction, it's becoming more and more clear to people that this is bullshit distinction. This is not how life works. Like if
Right.
you have a problem with your spouse, you get to your workplace, it will affect you. If you dealing with a lot of stress in the workplace, maybe you lost your biggest client, you go back home, this will affect your work, your family life as well. So trying to separate them is not going to work. Like that's what people have been trying to do, like trying to build those walls. But this is one human. It's not like, here's the business human, here's, me living the life human. So I think that for people to kind of build better connection, understanding the different parts of their lives, right? And what we were talking about in the beginning of this is like, for example, COVID made it obvious that, oh, you know what, humans can actually do work remotely quite
Hmm.
nicely, right? And I think for many
Yeah.
humans that was also eye-opening, that like, oh, you know what, I can be more connected with other aspects of my life while I'm still kind of delivering what I have to do for this business, for my career, business building goals and stuff like that. So that's kind of my overall observation on this.
Hmm. There's a good comment here from Sean Lai. Incredible perspective on human being. Very inspiring. Very much so. This has been a great interview, man. I'm going to go back and listen to this another time because there's a lot of takeaways from what you shared with us. One last thing I want to ask you, in terms of spirituality. I mean, that's a concept that to some people is kind of scary and foreign. Um,
Yes.
but it's also a concept that a lot of people are interested in, especially when you consider the crazy world that we're living in. And I know a lot of people maybe want to be more spiritual. They want to explore what it means to meditate, etc. What advice can you give for someone who is just starting out, doesn't really know what it means to be a spiritual person,
Yes.
to walk that path? For a beginner, what advice can you give?
Um, well, conceptually, the way I would explain spirituality, it's very simple for me. Again, it is really about understanding ourselves. deeper understanding ourselves, seeing our own patterns, seeing our emotions, seeing our discomfort and stuff like that. Because many people, they kind of think that, oh, here's life and spirituality is something foreign and different, and you have to go into the woods and meditate. Or sometimes people have this perspective that, meditation, for example, they think of this as like, I'm living my life and I'm stressed, and then I do my meditation, then I'm zen for a few minutes, and then I go back to my fucked up, stressed life.
Yeah.
That's not how I think about meditation at all. For
Yeah.
me, meditation is really about learning to be with ourselves, learning to sense like, okay, like, can I be with myself? So what is this discomfort here? Oh, let's sense this. Like, oh, why the heck can I not, sit still for 5 minutes? So why is this so uncomfortable? And not so much like trying to answer with your head, but seeing that, recognizing that. So for me,
Mm-hmm.
meditation is really a way for a human being to kind of turn their focus around and look at like, okay, this is kind of what's happening
Right.
with this human being, what is being felt, what are the emotions, what are the perceptions and stuff like that. And it's very interesting because human mind, again, is constantly seeking, like, and it can be seeking success in business, can be seeking happiness through relationships and having children or doing some charitable work. And actually, spirituality can become another way for a human being to, okay, now I'll be seeking to have no desires. And that's a never-ending process. Like, there is no limit to things you can keep seeking. And
Mm-hmm.
what I have found personally is that kind of deeper in this journey, it's really the journey of understanding ourselves, and uh, their end result. And there's no such thing as end result, but the deeper you understand this human being, the deeper you can connect with how interconnected everything is in this world. How interconnected, like, what are you doing is not just based on all of those wonderful goals and dreams that you have, but what is your relationship with your spouse, with your dog, with your child? What kind of music you listening to? Are you watching the fucking news and all the fucked up stuff that's mentioned there? And I haven't watched TV news for more than 2 decades, and stuff like that. Like, are you taking time outside? Are you exercising? All, like, how do all those things affect you, right? And like, the more we observe those things and not necessarily approach them with the mindset of like, let me change that, but more like, looking at them and just kind of very compassionately and with a lot of curiosity, like, oh, look at this, oh, this is how fucked up I am in this kind of way when this happens, like, this
Yeah.
is how I react. And then
Mm-hmm.
people
Mm-hmm.
tell me that I'm an asshole. Oh, I can see why they can see that, right? Like, isn't that funny, right? The more you can approach those things with really that compassion and curiosity, and then
Mm-hmm.
over time you can really see like how everything is connected and affecting each other. And again, like, your definitions of who you are, what success is, what happiness is, they kind of shift slowly over time. And one
Yeah.
last thing I want to mention about this, uh, you've heard the saying, I'm sure, that it doesn't matter where you are, it matters where you're going. So I'm a big believer in taking lots of little tiny steps, like, and like, people say, oh, I cannot meditate. Why? Well, it's hard for me to find 30 minutes. You know what? Like, find one fucking minute. Can you do one fucking minute a day? Yeah, most people can find one fucking minute, right? But okay, set a little challenge for yourself. Can you do 1 minute for 10 days? Okay, then maybe you can become a super achiever and do 2 minutes, right? So, but do it for another 10 days. So for me, in that process, uh, persistence and consistency and continuing on those small steps, they actually, everything big is always built from a lot of small steps, right? Whenever people say, oh, I don't want to do this small stuff, I just want to jump here and everything just happen, and like, I want to think big and whatever, this is bullshit, right? Big things, they come out of all those little changes, all of those little steps that we take, and over time they actually accumulate and they become so huge and so powerful. So really, that's the real momentum. The momentum happens from constant movement, small steps, continue.
Mm-hmm.
And this applies to our, if you will, spiritual aspects of our lives,
Yeah.
which is really about life. Life is life.
Yeah. Yeah. The journey rather of 1,000 miles begins with a few steps, right?
Yeah, yeah. And with the first step, right? And you
Yeah.
make the first step. And maybe on your second step, you fucking fall down. And that's fine, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
then you can get up, you can lie on your back for a few days. Like you can take another step. Yeah, that's fine. And maybe you'll take 2 steps and so on.
Yeah. We've got a lot of great feedback, and then crystal clear and to the point, both questions and answers. Thank you. Would have loved to drink a cappuccino and talk about life with both of you. Thank you very much. Always lovely to hear both perspectives. Yeah, this has been great. We're getting up close to an hour now. Dima, is there anything you want to say just before we wrap up? I know you've shared a lot with us, but any just closing thoughts?
I think we covered a lot of ground. One last thing I'll mention, and we kind of touched upon that, right? But I think that the crypto and blockchain space is a huge paradigm shift in how we interact with the world. And on the one hand, you can say it's about technology, but it's much more than about technology. It's really about our relationship with trust and authority. And as humans, we've done a lot of experimentation with different types of structures around that. And I think that over time we can realize that centralized structures, they don't work. Like for example, if you look at the human body, right? Is your brain more important than your heart? Not really, or your liver. You know what? You might think this way, but if you have any kind of health problem with like some tiny gland in your body, it will fuck you up, and then your brain and your thoughts will kind of become very secondary versus dealing with that thing, right? So human being is such a interconnected system of different organs and processes and stuff like that. And the same applies to the human society and human initiatives and projects. And I think that blockchain and crypto technologies, they now enable us to build very different ways of dealing things, very different ways of, like Workwolf is dealing with verifications and attestations about stuff. And this will apply to every area of human life, right? So I guess one thing, the thing that I'm trying to say is that whatever your space, whatever your business is about, whatever your work, I really want you to look deeper and learn about crypto, about blockchain. How is this affecting my industry? How is this affecting, my business? And if it's not, how can I learn? How can I start using that? Because this will make a huge impact on your life. I guarantee you that.
Yeah. And again, it's another, mentioned before that spirituality is something that's kind of intimidating to some people. No doubt the crypto blockchain world is something that a lot of people hear and they don't want anything to do with it, but it's so interesting. It is a huge paradigm shift. And if people, those who don't understand what is happening won't be able to take advantage of what is happening and use it to better their lives, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who's the individual in the background, the monk in your photo behind you?
I just like this painting.
It's a nice painting. I'm curious if there is any significance to it, but it is very nice.
No,
anyways,
the significance is that I like it.
Yeah, that's all that matters.
Yeah,
right?
That's kind of one of my big findings in life as well. Is like the real freedom is not in attaching significance to certain individuals and things and processes and books, but it's like every little thing is just as significant as a big thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and there is freedom in just liking what we like, and then also in giving the freedom to other humans to like what they like and not like what we like, and so on.
Yeah, absolutely. Great interview. Thanks, Dima.
Thank you.
Andre Wagnum commenting. Thanks for everyone that's tuned in and still here with us for the full hour. Dima, this has been great. Really do appreciate it. For all of our listeners, you can follow Dmitry on Twitter, BlockGeekDima, at BlockGeekDima. I know you're active on Twitter. You've got a very nice following. So give Dmitry a follow and make sure you are subscribed to the Workwolf podcast. We will have more episodes and fantastic interviews like the one you just heard. Dmitry, it's been a pleasure. Thanks, my friend.
Thanks, Frank. Take care.
All right. Take care. Ciao.